The most baffling, contradictory behavior a man will ever witness in modern dating is when a woman suddenly pulls back, creates distance, and pushes him away right when things are going perfectly. To the logical masculine mind, this looks like a clear sign of rejection or a total loss of interest. However, the deepest layers of female psychology reveal a completely different reality. A woman will often push you away precisely when she wants you the most. When her emotional attachment to you reaches a critical threshold, it triggers a profound internal panic that threatens her sense of control and exposes her deepest vulnerabilities. As a woman who understands the intricate, unspoken mechanics of female psychology, I am going to pull back the curtain on why she behaves this way. Today, we are breaking down the psychological warfare that occurs inside her mind when she falls for a high-value man. Subscribe to this channel right now, lock in your focus, and let us begin. 1. The terrifying panic of losing control. The primary reason a woman will violently push you away when she wants you most is the sudden, terrifying panic of completely losing her emotional control. In the modern dating landscape, many women utilize a carefully curated armor of casual indifference and emotional distance to protect their ego and maintain the upper hand in relationships. They are accustomed to controlling the narrative, deciding when to text, and determining the pace of the interaction. The exact second she encounters a truly high-value man whose masculine presence completely bypasses her defenses, her psychological baseline is thrown into absolute chaos. She looks at how deeply she thinks about you, how anxiously she awaits your messages, and how heavily your opinion weighs on her self-esteem, and she becomes consumed by a profound sense of internal panic. She realizes that she no longer holds the remote control to her own emotions, and to the feminine psyche, this total lack of control feels incredibly unsafe. Her immediate defense mechanism is to deliberately push you away, pick fights, or create artificial distance in a desperate attempt to regain her emotional equilibrium and prove to herself that she can still survive without you. This destructive behavioral cycle is the direct result of her confronting a man who unconsciously commands the Stoic principle of emotional gravity. The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus frequently noted that most people are completely enslaved by their attachments, becoming utterly terrified when they encounter a force that they cannot easily manipulate or predict. When you stand your ground as an unshakable, self-contained man, your stability acts like a mirror that reflects her own internal chaos back at her. She pushes you away not because she doesn't want you, but because her intense desire for you has shattered her illusion of absolute independence, and she is frantically trying to piece her armor back together. Consider how a wild, untamed stallion reacts when it first encounters an expert rider who cannot be shaken, thrown, or intimidated. The animal will buck, kick, and fight with immense ferocity, not because it hates the rider, but because it is terrified of the absolute submission required to cooperate with a superior force. Ask yourself this mind-blowing question. Why are you panicking and assuming she has lost interest when she pulls back, instead of recognizing that her sudden coldness is the ultimate proof that your masculine gravity has completely overwhelmed her emotional defenses? A woman will only fight against a connection that has the power to completely alter her reality. When you remain perfectly calm and refuse to chase her during this phase, you force her to confront the futility of her panic, leaving her with no choice but to accept her deep attraction to you. 2. The subconscious urgent need to test your masculine core. The second reason a woman will deliberately push you away right when her feelings are strongest is an urgent, subconscious need to test the absolute strength of your masculine core. Inside the feminine psyche, there is an ancient evolutionary blueprint that demands she verify whether a man is truly as strong, stable, and unshakable as he appears on the surface before she completely surrenders her heart to him. When she realizes she is falling heavily for you, her emotional stakes skyrocket, and along with that comes an intense fear of investing her time in a fraud. To eliminate this fear, her subconscious mind automatically triggers a series of compliance tests, emotional hand grenades, and artificial boundaries designed to rock your boat and see if you tip over. She will intentionally delay her responses, act cold on a date, or challenge your opinions, thinking to herself that if you are a weak man, you will instantly crack under the pressure, lashing out in anger, begging for her reassurance, or overcompensating with desperate attention. If you fail these tests by losing your composure, you confirm her worst fear, that your confidence was just an act. This psychological dynamic represents her hitting your boundaries with full force to see if they are made of solid rock or cheap plastic, a concept deeply rooted in the Stoic mastery of apatheia, the ability to remain entirely unmoved by external chaos. The ancient Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius repeatedly wrote that a man must stand like a solid cliff against which the wild waves continuously break, yet it stands firm, and the fury of the water sinks to rest around it. When you handle her sudden pushback with absolute stoicism, maintaining your exact same calm demeanor, your silence sends a deafening message to her subconscious that your emotional stability is entirely independent of her moods. She realizes with immense relief that you are a genuine alpha who cannot be manipulated, shaken, or destabilized by her emotional storms. Consider how an inspection team will intentionally subject a brand new bridge to extreme, unnatural weight loads and seismic vibrations before allowing the public to cross it. They aren't trying to destroy the bridge. They are verifying that its core infrastructure can withstand the heaviest crises. Ask yourself this mind-blowing question. Why are you taking her emotional tests personally and reacting with frustration, instead of recognizing that she is throwing everything she has at your fortress just to ensure it is strong enough to protect her? When you refuse to break and simply allow her waves to crash against your granite boundaries, you pass her ultimate test, transforming her defensive push into a state of total, submissive attraction. 3. The terror of emotional vulnerability and past trauma. The third driving force that compels a woman to push you away when she wants you most is the paralyzing terror of emotional vulnerability and the ghosts of her past trauma. When a woman has experienced painful heartbreaks, betrayals, or abandonment in her past, her mind builds an elaborate system of psychological defense mechanisms designed to prevent that agony from ever happening again. In most of her casual interactions, these defenses remain dormant because she never allows average men to get close enough to threaten her peace. The exact second you enter her life as a high-value man who checks every single box, those internal alarm bells begin to ring at a deafening volume. She looks at how deeply she cares about your opinion, how easily you could break her heart, and how completely she has let her guard down around you, and her trauma response mistakes this intense attraction for a life-threatening danger. Her subconscious mind tells her that the only way to avoid the inevitable pain of losing you in the future is to preemptively destroy the connection right now, while she still has the strength to walk away. This erratic behavior is a desperate attempt to reject you before you have the chance to reject her, a direct manifestation of what the Stoics identified as the destructive power of unexamined impressions and irrational fears. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote extensively about how the human mind often manufactures its own torment out of past shadows, warning that we suffer far more often in imagination than in reality. When she pushes you away due to this deep-seated fear, she is caught in an intense internal war between her immense desire for your presence and her terrifying instinct for self-preservation. If you respond to her withdrawal by chasing her, becoming overly emotional, or demanding explanations, you inadvertently validate her fear by bringing chaos and instability into her space. Your absolute best move is to employ the Stoic virtue of absolute composure. You do not take her withdrawal personally, nor do you try to force her to heal. You simply stand your ground like a beacon of unyielding stability, showing her through your calm indifference that you are not intimidated by her fears, nor are you going to participate in her self-sabotaging games. Consider how a wounded, mistreated animal will viciously growl and bare its teeth at a kind rescuer who approaches with food. It is not acting out of malice, but out of a deeply ingrained survival instinct that views close proximity as an immediate threat. Ask yourself this mind-blowing question. Why are you taking her defensive retreat as a personal insult and walking away in anger, instead of recognizing that her fear is the ultimate confirmation that you have penetrated her deepest emotional defenses? When you remain perfectly stable and refuse to participate in her emotional turbulence, you show her that your masculine core is a safe, unshakable harbor, forcing her fears to naturally evaporate in the presence of your solid strength. 4. The self-sabotage of unworthiness. The fourth psychological barrier that causes a woman to push you away when she wants you most is the toxic cycle of self-sabotage, rooted in a deep sense of unworthiness. When a woman is accustomed to dealing with low-value, desperate men who constantly tolerate her bad behavior, validate her ego, and place her on an unearned pedestal, she develops a specific psychological comfort zone. She becomes conditioned to dynamics where she holds all the power and never has to elevate her character. The exact second she crosses paths with an elite, self-contained man who operates with absolute dignity, firm boundaries, and zero tolerance for games, her entire self-perception is radically challenged. She looks at your discipline, your purpose, and your refusal to chase her, and an intense, subconscious insecurity begins to fester inside her mind. She thinks to herself that she is not mature enough, classy enough, or emotionally stable enough to keep a man of your exceptional caliber. Instead of stepping up to meet your high standards, her ego takes the path of least resistance. She pushes you away to escape the uncomfortable pressure of having to grow. This self-sabotaging retreat is a textbook example of what the Stoics called living in accordance with vice and ignorance rather than virtue and reason. The ancient Stoic master Epictetus taught that many people are so deeply attached to their old, comfortable chains that they will actively fight against the very freedom and excellence presented to them. When you refuse to lower your bar to match her chaotic baseline, your high-value lifestyle acts as a silent judgment on her emotional immaturity. She pushes you away because it is far easier for her ego to label you as cold, distant, or arrogant than it is for her to admit that she lacks the discipline to be a cooperative partner to a high-value man. Consider a person who has spent their entire life eating cheap, toxic junk food suddenly being presented with a flawless, world-class culinary masterpiece. Instead of appreciating its immense value, they may reject it entirely and run back to their familiar comfort food simply because their palate is too unrefined to handle true quality. Ask yourself this mind-blowing question. Why are you considering lowering your standards or begging for her attention just because she is too intimidated by your greatness to stand by your side? When you maintain your absolute stoic composure and refuse to compromise your boundaries, you force her to sit alone with her own insecurities, leaving her to realize that she is the one who must rise to your level or be left behind forever. 5. The fear of being exposed as ordinary. The fifth psychological phenomenon that drives a woman to push you away when her attraction is at an all-time high is the immense fear of being exposed as ordinary in your eyes. Many women in the modern dating pool are highly adept at constructing a flawless, highly curated external persona that projects supreme confidence, mystery, and elite social standing. They use their physical beauty, their social media presence, and a calculated aura of unavailability to keep average men mesmerized and at a safe distance. However, when she encounters a truly high-value man who possesses sharp, masculine intuition and an unshakable stoic focus, she realizes that her external armor is completely transparent to you. She senses that you do not look at her through the desperate eyes of a fan, but through the discerning eyes of a leader who judges a person based on internal character, emotional maturity, and genuine virtue. The closer she gets to you, the more her anxiety skyrockets as she thinks to herself, "Once he gets past my beauty and sees my flaws, my insecurities, and my everyday ordinariness, he will instantly lose interest and leave me. To protect her ego from the perceived humiliation of being weighed, measured, and found wanting by an elite man, she will choose to preemptively push you away, manufacture a disagreement, or suddenly become emotionally unavailable. This self-defensive retreat is a direct reaction to confronting a man who embodies the stoic virtue of phronesis, the deep, practical wisdom and piercing perception that cuts right through superficial illusions and demands absolute truth. The ancient Stoics constantly reminded themselves that physical beauty and external status are nothing more than fleeting, preferred indifference that holds zero weight when compared to the gold standard of a disciplined mind and an honest soul. When you treat her beauty with calm, polite indifference rather than desperate worship, you force her to realize that she cannot buy your loyalty with superficial assets alone. She pushes you away because the sheer pressure of wanting to appear perfect for a man of your caliber becomes completely overwhelming to her fragile self-esteem. Consider how a counterfeit artist who has successfully fooled amateur collectors for years will suddenly panic, pack up their inventory, and flee the room the exact moment a world-renowned master appraiser walks through the door. They aren't leaving because they hate the appraiser. They are running because they are terrified their artifice will be exposed under expert scrutiny. Ask yourself this mind-blowing question. Why are you chasing after her and trying to soothe her sudden coldness instead of letting your calm, steady perception force her to drop the act and bring real, transparent value to your life? When you remain completely unmoved by her defensive withdrawal, you signal that you cannot be tricked by emotional smoke and mirrors, leaving her completely captivated by a man who demands absolute authenticity. 6. The subconscious craving for masculine leadership and direct guidance. The sixth and final psychological catalyst that causes a woman to push you away when she wants you most is her deep, subconscious craving for genuine masculine leadership and direct guidance. In a modern society where the lines of relationship dynamics have become entirely blurred, many women are forced to constantly operate in their masculine energy, making all the decisions, managing logistics, and protecting their own boundaries. When a woman falls heavily for a high-value man, her deepest feminine desire is to completely step down from that exhausting role and surrender the reins to someone who is stronger and more competent than she is. However, before she can mentally allow herself to trust your leadership, her subconscious mind will intentionally create a situation of friction, chaos, or emotional pushback to see if you actually have the backbone to guide her through it. She will act stubborn, question your plans, or create an unnecessary roadblock, thinking to herself, "Is this a man who will fold under my resistance? Or will he stand tall, calmly command the situation, and lead me past my own emotional roadblocks?" If you respond to her pushback by getting defensive, asking her what you should do, or walking away in a huff, you fail the test by proving you lack the executive presence required to handle her world. This final dynamic represents her testing your capacity for hegemonicon, the foundational Stoic concept of the ruling center of the mind that maintains absolute authority, logic, and forward momentum, regardless of external weather. The ancient Stoics, most notably Marcus Aurelius, taught that a true leader never complains about the obstacles thrown in his path. Instead, he uses his rational mind to convert every obstacle into fuel to advance his mission. When you respond to her stubbornness not with emotional anger, but with a calm, decisive, and unshakable direction, you provide the exact masculine container her soul is crying out for. She stops pushing you away the moment she realizes that her emotional storms have absolutely zero power to derail your masculine train. Consider how an experienced captain navigating a ship through a violent dark storm does not go below deck to ask the panicked passengers how to steer the vessel. He stands firmly at the helm, looks at the raging sea with absolute composure, and confidently commands the crew precisely because he knows exactly how to bring them safely to the harbor. Ask yourself this mind-blowing question. Why are you treating her sudden resistance as a reason to panic or argue, instead of recognizing it as a silent, desperate plea for you to step up, assert your unshakable boundaries, and lead her through her own confusion? When you refuse to be swayed by her pushback and simply maintain your calm, clear direction, you fulfill her deepest psychological need, transforming her defensive wall into a state of absolute total surrender. The ultimate paradox of female psychology is that a woman's coldest retreat is often the loudest indicator of her deepest attraction. When she pushes you away, she isn't necessarily rejecting you. She is frantically reacting to the terrifying realization that your masculine presence has completely shattered her emotional armor. Stop taking her emotional storms personally. Stop trying to fix her insecurities. And above all, stop chasing her when she pulls back. If you ever find your composure slipping or feel the urge to react with frustration, return to this channel immediately to realign your focus. Subscribe to this channel right now to lock in this unyielding stoic discipline. Step out into the world today. Stand like a solid cliff against her waves. Maintain your unshakable purpose, and let your calm, steady strength guide her out of her own chaos and straight back into your world.